Hello, everybody. It's His Royal Highness, Dr. Stuart Ellen Swerdlow,
And Janet Diane Moria Swerdlow.
who's the Empress of His Royal Highness.
Is that right?
And this is the addendum to the last week of August 2018 Expansions News Podcast. Would you like me to give my couple of stories
You've
first?
got a couple of stories?
Just a couple.
All right.
Maybe more than a couple. But Vice President Pence spoke to the NASA Johnson Space Center in Houston, our new favorite city, that he toured with the astronauts. And he said, and I quote, "While our sights are once again set on our lunar neighbor, this time we're not content with just leaving behind footprints, or even to leave at all," he said. "This time has come, we believe, for the United States of America to take what we have learned over these so many decades, to put ingenuity and creativity to work and establish a permanent presence around and on the moon." So it's around and in.
On the dark side of the moon.
Yes, and he goes on to say, last year, NASA began to work with American innovators to design Lunar Gateway's unique electrical propulsion system. We're working with the Congress, that's a mistake, to provide an unprecedented $500 million to move the lunar orbital platform from proposal to production. We're only a few short years away from launching the Gateway's first building blocks into space, turning science fiction into science fact. In other words, I'll translate. We're going to take the science that is 1,000 years ahead that we have that the public doesn't know about, and then make it public.
That's a big revelation.
Yes. And our administration's working tirelessly to put an American crew aboard the lunar orbital platform before the end of 2024. That's only 6 years away. We could still be alive
Maybe.
then. Pence also said that NASA uses the Space Launch System, SLS. They should put my initial in them. It's called Rocket and Orion spacecraft. That's interesting. Which are both under development to push towards the moon and beyond, which they already really did. So that basically he's saying, we already have this. We're already all over the place. Now we're going to let you know. And as discussed, security in space, and this was last week's news, I think, President Donald Trump planned to create a space force.
Yeah, I reported on
To
that.
support the national security off the planet. There's a reason why they're doing this, people.
Yeah, but you have to remember the Space Force already exists.
Yes.
Except now they're telling people.
Yes, and I'm going to tell you it has to do with the white hats, the black hats, blah, 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 and factions that are aligning with those who will change the earth. It's about freaking time.
Let's hope they change it positively.
It can't get worse.
Things can always get worse.
Get
my
rid of
dear.
the black hats and we'll be all right. And then my people will come and take over. Anyway, guess what happened in Australia? You know they're upside down. They have a lot of blood
That I
going to
know,
there.
right?
Well, Scott Morrison has now been elected Australia's 30th Prime Minister. They got rid of Turnbull. Well, Mr. Morrison is the son of a police officer. He's an evangelical Protestant and a member of the Horizon Church, formerly known as Shire Live, I think you pronounce Shire Live. I don't know how to say
Shire
it.
Live.
Shire Live. Mr. Morrison has appealed to social conservative voters of the Liberal Party. And this is a quote. "My personal faith in Jesus Christ," this is the Prime Minister of Australia.
I guess they don't believe in separation of church and state.
Well, listen, "My personal faith in Jesus Christ is not a political agenda for me. Faith is personal, but the implications are social. From my faith, I derive the values of loving kindness, justice, and righteousness, to act with compassion and kindness, acknowledging our common humanity, and to consider the welfare of others, to fight for a fair go for everyone to fulfill their human potential and to remove whatever unjust obstacles stand in their way, including diminishing their personal responsibility for their own well-being, diminishing their personal responsibility for their personal well-being, and to do what is right, to respect the rule of law, the sanctity of human life, and the moral integrity of marriage and the family. Woo! That's a big statement for an Aussie.
It's a very big statement.
Holy cannolis, and there was no kangaroo chasing him either. And Mr. Morrison first met his wife through church connections when she was just 12 years old. And they got married when he was 21.
Well, how old was she?
It doesn't say. I wonder about that one, Mr. Morrison. But I want you to remember, people, when Trump took office, the phone call that Trump had with Prime Minister Turnbull in Australia, and Trump said it was the worst phone call he ever had in his life. Click, 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 wheels turning. We must get rid of him, replace with a Trump positive. This new Prime Minister is part of the Trump alliance. And actually, it's a good thing. And so now, that being accomplished, Mr. Trump is turning his attention to South Africa. We have a lot of connections to South Africa.
And a lot of things have been going on in South Africa, which we've been reporting on.
I've worked there before, in Johannesburg, Cape Town, and so on. Anyway, South Africa faces a potential economic calamity if it moves ahead with the seizure of largely white-owned farmland, a plan that government leaders say is necessary to correct decades-old wrongs of apartheid that left deep systematic wealth inequalities and land ownership disparities along racial lines. So in order to correct something, let's do another bad thing so the two wrongs can make a right. Makes sense to me, South Africa. That's why you're a world power. Officials in South Africa warned Tuesday or last week that the plan would cost the government $2.8 billion in payouts. They don't even have $10 now.
They have a lot of problems.
The Trump administration wants South Africa to stop at this. And according to the new South African president, Cyril Ramaphosa, I hope I said that right, he says, since the end of apartheid in 1994, the ruling African National Congress has adopted a willing seller, willing buyer model under which the government buys white-owned farms for redistribution to blacks. But the problem is they're taking the farms and not paying the white people. He says, it's challenging because there are no models. Yeah, it's called stealing. In the 21st century, that shows taking one group's property away and giving it to another without compensation has not ended in popular. And so it's suggested that he look at Zimbabwe and Venezuela, where they did the same thing, and those people are starving to death. Whites make up 9% of South Africa's population.
Make up how much?
9%.
It's small.
Yes. And they own 3/4 of its farmland and half of its urban property. And Mr. Ramaphosa announced the plan this month, saying he would push the change to the nation's constitution to allow the expropriation of farmland with no compensation. Well, that sounds fair to me.
We've been talking about that for several months, actually.
He also suggested the plan to move forward without constitutional change, and he says, black people want their land back. Well, here's a clue to you, Mr. Ramaphosa. It was never their land. And I mentioned this once on a podcast about true history, and I got my head chopped off. There were no black people in South Africa until the Dutch, German, and British went there and then asked them to come to farm the land for them because they needed help. It was empty. There were no black people, again, in South Africa, south of the Kalahari Desert. And it suggested that the U.S. Congress hold hearings on the situation in South Africa. And in Zimbabwe in 2000, under President Robert Mugabe, who thank God he's gone, he seized white-owned farmland and cost the country $20 billion, producing drastic food and consumer goods shortages, skyrocketing inflation, violent clashes between blacks and whites, and ultimately food production dropped dramatically, the unemployment rate hit historic highs, and the country had to suspend its own currency, while Mr. Mugabe and his wife had several Rolls Royces, private jets, and mansions.
I remember all of that.
So, black people taking care of black people in Africa? No. They're worse than the whites. And I'm going to tell you right now that the black people were never farmers in South Africa. They don't know how to run a farm, and this is a train wreck waiting to happen. And I support President Trump in what he says about this. And even officials in South Africa say that if the government fails to protect the bank's rights as a creditor, it would be forced to pay billions of dollars because of contractual agreements that specifically protect against expropriation. So my opinion is, and again, I'm not politically correct, and I'm glad I'm not, it is a reverse apartheid. And will anyone speak up about the rights of the white landowners who were there before the blacks? This is a disaster in the making. It proves that the South African government is controlled by brainless people who should be eliminated from office. I'm sure I'll get a lot of comments about that one from people who don't know anything about history or politics. And I'll just flash my chest again. One more story, please, may I? And this is about a mysterious ribbon of light called Steve. That sounds like a Disney movie.
It does. It's funny because they're calling people things like flower and trees and whatever, and now this mysterious light is called Steve.
And Steve is not an aurora after all. Scientists say the sky glows represent an entirely new celestial phenomenon. They began studying these mysterious ribbons of light called Steve in 2016. They were thought to be auroras, but they're not. They are mysterious purple and white ribbons of light seen dancing across the sky and may represent a never-before identified sky glow, whatever the hell that means.
I thought it was just a shaft of light going up.
No, it's a ribbon. And they've been documenting the phenomenon for decades, but only started studying it 2 years ago.
When did they name him?
Well, they called it Steve. Now, here's the funny part. They called it Steve. It was given in honor of a 2006 movie called Over the Hedge. I haven't seen it.
Never
Obviously,
heard of it.
there must have been a character named Steve in there.
I don't know.
So they're calling it a backronym because they like the name Steve. So now they're going to create an explanation of what that means. And guess what Steve means? Strong thermal emission velocity enhancement. Why can't they name it Stewart?
I don't
We have
know.
a much better acronym.
I think so.
Anyway,
You should have thought of some proposal.
I'm going to, but they won't listen. I'm going to make up my own, have my own lights in the sky
I think
called
that's
Stewart.
a good idea.
The researchers found there were no charged particles associated with the Steve event, which suggests it wasn't an aurora at all. Here's the brainiac part. So right now, we know very little about it, and that's really cool. I'm like so sure.
That's cool.
I'm so sure.
Okay.
Okay, because it's the result of the oncoming ice age, and it is found mostly towards the equator because all the electromagnetic energy is being pushed towards the middle of the Earth.
That's the equator?
Yeah.
I thought it was at north.
No, it's not.
It's
It's
in
towards the equator. And so, listen to me, people. I'm telling you what it is, and it's not Steve, it's Stewart.
Yeah, but I thought it was north. That's what
It's
confused
not.
me. Well, it's a good thing you settled that.
Doesn't it?
All right, now I have a very interesting story about children because we've been talking a lot about how people are having their children taken away, especially the UK. That's been a big thing.
Love the UK.
Okay, well this
I call it YUK. Yuck.
well, this happens to be in Oregon, here in the U.S. And this was about a woman who said that the school had taken away her daughter who wanted to be a transgender.
Oh, not again.
Yes. So this woman filed a lawsuit in 2017 saying that this is what the school district did, and the parent lost. So she lost custody
You're
of
kidding.
her child. She had a daughter who believed that she was a transgender boy. And so in the suit, the woman whose last name is Leontiev, I guess, Greta
Who knows?
Leontiev.
British, they make up names.
This is in the U.S.
Oh, you said UK.
No, I said they're taking away children in the UK. I said this is in the state of Oregon.
Well, you know I don't pay attention to you.
Well, you need to pay attention. Greta Leontiev, who is a special education teacher in that
But
district.
that's a Russian name.
She still lived in Oregon, dear. She filed, just like you have a Russian name, filed the suit in 2017. In this suit, she claims that the teacher convinced her daughter to leave her mother's home and live with the teacher.
Teachers should be beaten up.
So apparently she started this court case back in November of 2016, 2 years ago. And at that time, that after a cast party, the daughter left with the teacher's daughter. And then the daughter wrote saying, "You and Dad refused to accept that I'm a boy."
Because you're not.
So then the mother said she was going to the teacher's home to bring the daughter back.
If you're a boy, where's your penis?
And when she arrived at the teacher's home, the teacher said she didn't know where the daughter was, but she was safe. And then the daughter filed a report with the Department of Human Services saying that the mother and her husband emotionally abused the daughter because they didn't believe she was a boy.
She should be smacked on the head.
So the mother filed a complaint with the school district and alleging the child was a runaway who was being harbored by
She
the
was
teacher.
kidnapped by those teachers.
And a member of the school board, thus violating Oregon educator ethics
Well,
codes.
you lived in Oregon.
I did. So a caseworker concluded there is enough evidence gathered that indicates the daughter has not been emotionally abused by his parents.
His or her?
His. It's a daughter, but it identifies now as a
She
boy.
has no penis.
So therefore the mother lost the case and lost custody of her daughter because the daughter claimed that she was a boy. So just be aware that these are the things that are coming up. Now speaking of custody, which was interesting that these custody things are going on so much with children. Now I didn't know this, maybe you did. Did you know that Kate Middleton and Prince William don't technically have custody of their own children?
I heard something about that.
But there is a 300-year-old royal rule that says the sovereign has legal custody of the minor grandchildren. This supposedly goes back to King George I, who ruled in the early 1700s, and they claim the law has never been changed, that King George I did not have a good relationship with his son, so they passed a law that said the king was guardian of the grandchildren, and therefore it's never been changed. Now, we don't know that, because we don't know what happened
So
300
he didn't
years
get along
ago.
with his son, but he wanted to control his grandchildren, so he made this law.
Yes, so it means that the Queen actually had custody of Prince William and Prince Harry when they were minors. But it's unclear if if she has custody of George, Charlotte, and Louis, since technically they're her great-grandchildren.
Oh, that's right.
But if Meghan and Harry have children, they will be her grandchildren, and she will have custody of those, it says.
Huh.
Right? Is that correct? That's what it says in the
It's too
article. It says
confusing.
grandchildren.
But that's
Anyway.
Britain.
For the sovereign, custody means having a say in the grandchild's upbringing, travel, education, care, ordering of the place of their abode, appointing their governors and governesses,
Well, you know what? Then they could pay for it too.
and the care and approbation of their marriages, which is why they have to go to the Queen to ask if they can be married.
Oh, for goodness
And a lot of people don't know that.
Seriously.
And apparently when Prince Charles and Princess Diana divorced, Prince Andrew and Sarah Ferguson divorced, no mention of the children's custody. That didn't even have to be discussed
Because
because
the Queen,
the Queen had custody to begin with. So legally the parents did not have custody of their own children.
and that's okay with them.
Now they're claiming in the article, of course it's okay with them, but how they probably don't care.
Just give me $1 billion, Granny, and it should be fine.
Just part of what people do at that level. Okay, and then there's a progressive church in Santa Cruz that is serving beer during services and
I heard about that.
opening a brewery, and the pastor claims that Jesus was a feminist and that
And he
Jesus
drank beer.
was a person of color, and
What?
Jesus was killed by the white supremacy.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Well, you go for the church just for the beer.
Yeah, I don't know. And then here in Michigan, a 12-year-old girl from Detroit was severely burned after participating in what her mother called the fire challenge. Now, how silly is
Oh
this,
my
right?
gosh.
So what? Either watch
Why are
your children,
people doing this?
or have better educate your children actually, because no child should want to do this. Anyway, she became engulfed in flames. She mimicked a video on YouTube. Now she's in the
You
hospital.
know what? Those are stupid parents.
Stupid
and
parents,
stupid kids.
stupid. And did you see that one of that girl who pushed the girl off the
Ah,
bridge?
the one who pushes
Washington
should be
State?
executed.
And of course, she's
But
facing
first beat her, break all her
charges.
bones, and then kill her.
But this is what people are doing to each other. This is not.
And she said she has no regrets
Right.
and she doesn't care.
And
Well, I smacked him in the head a few times. He'll care.
I saw her saying that she had regrets. She wouldn't do it again, and she was willing to take whatever.
Well, she's going to jail for a year apparently.
Oh, really? I didn't hear that
Yes.
part. Well, anyway, and then last month they said a 15-year-old teen suffered second-degree burns to his face and body after his quote-unquote friends allegedly poured boiling hot water on him as he slept
That's a friend.
to complete the hot water challenge. So
Yeah,
don't do
and
this.
so what would they feel after that they accomplished?
Yeah, I don't know, but these are really people
How did
that
they
are
make their
bored.
lives
Or
better?
how about the people who did that one? I think a report on the dancing challenge on a moving car, and then they got hit. And
Well, the one in the where you go in the shower and you put something and you set yourself on
this
fire.
is similar to what this is. So this is really silly. And like I said, parents, you've
Who
got
thinks
to
of these things?
and you've got to educate your kids so they're smart enough to know not to do these things.
Listen to me. Anyone who even thinks that it's okay to do that is a moron,
They have-
and they should die.
No,
They shouldn't
I don't-
replicate.
I don't
They
wish-
shouldn't have children.
I don't wish these things on anybody, but I'm just telling you, you have to educate your children, and that begins like right after they're born, not after you put them in daycare for years at a time, and all of a sudden they're 12 and 15 years old doing silly things. So the parents, you have to take responsibility. I'm sorry. I'm not
Not sorry. They should. Where the frick are the parents?
And here
With
we
that
have
church drinking beer.
again women thinking that going topless is going to change the world, which is really silly.
Well, it changed my world.
That's true, it did.
Hmm.
Kathy Griffin goes topless to celebrate
Griffin?
Manafort Cohen guilty verdicts. So they show her dancing in front of a window with her top
Oh,
off.
she shouldn't. It's ugly.
Well, they just showed her back. But the issue is, again, we keep telling you that this is the new thing for people to do, is to be topless to show your support of this or that,
Well, that's
or be
why
naked.
I do it. That's
Yeah.
why I do it.
To be naked to show your support of this or that, and it's just New World religion.
And your paint is running again.
Yeah,
I think.
to New World religion, which is teaching you to do really silly things in public, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now back to school. This time in Tarboro, North Carolina,
There's a name?
where a 5th grader was punished for referring to his teacher as ma'am. A 10-year-old boy came home with a sheet of paper with the word ma'am written 4 times on every line, front and back, and he had to have it signed by his parents.
But was she a ma'am?
Well, she told him not to call her ma'am.
Why?
They never said this in the article, and the school will not offer explanation. But a part of his punishment, he had to have the paper signed by his parents. Well, his parents had taught him to say yes, ma'am, yes, sir.
Yes, what's wrong with that?
So,
Especially in North Carolina, was it?
yes.
It's very southern.
Yes. And so she also told this young man, 10 years old, if she had something, she would have thrown it at him. But then she claimed she was only kidding, and that this 10-year-old knew that. But
Well,
obviously he was
she
upset.
wants to be called Mister.
I don't know. And then she had a second sheet where she made him define the word ma'am.
You know what? That teacher should be executed.
So they removed him from her classroom.
It's a good thing I'm not really emperor because there'd be no one left on the planet.
And as I'm saying, this is just silly stuff, because saying yes, ma'am, yes, sir, in my opinion, is a sign of respect.
I call you ma'am.
Yeah, I make you.
You make me.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm just saying these are just crazy times, and the things that people have to put up with for some odd reason are extremely crazy. And speaking of crazy, now I have told you before
Why are you
about
looking at me when you say
about ecosexuals.
Oh, what does that mean again?
It means, according to this journal called Feminist Theory and Professor Lauren Whitworth of St. Mary's College in Maryland, an ecosexual is 1, a person that finds nature sensual and sexy.
Ooh.
2, a new sexual identity. And 3, the person who takes the earth as their lover.
So you can like have sex with the dirt and
Yes,
the trees.
and I've talked about that. And of course, paganism at one time was kind of like that, which to me is like a forerunner coming back to New World religion, which is really like Old World religion paganism. Except even that didn't go quite that far, depending upon the sect that you were in. Now, this was the bizarre thing, which I've been talking about
It's
in...
more bizarre than that.
Yes, more bizarre than that. Because this professor says that how defecating outside is a form of ecosexuality.
It is.
Because it celebrates the carnal and grotesque, particularly in some of its campiest moments. And I've been telling you that pooping is going to be part of New World religion.
I just don't understand
And
this.
people are doing this publicly, so she's saying that's actually a very sexual thing to
I don't
poop
want to see
outside.
that. I don't want to see
Nobody
that.
wants to
Publicly
see
or
it.
not.
So it's interesting because this was apparently kind of giving us a little history. It says in November 2016, Breitbart News reported that ecosexuals were masturbating under waterfalls and trees to, quote, save the planet. I've talked about Save the Planet programming before. Then in September, here we are a year later, September 2017, Breitbart News reported that a University of California, Santa Cruz professor
California, Santa Cruz again.
was encouraging her students to have sex with the earth to preserve the earth. And
Because that'll
now,
help.
in April 2018, Breitbart News reported on a University of Michigan professor that wrote about the importance of talking erotically to plants. So,
You know, I do that, and my tomatoes are really growing.
yeah, but I'm just telling you, this
And the
is
plant's
crazy
tomatoes
stuff.
too.
And speaking of crazy stuff, in Mexico, a city there, Mexico City, actually is legalizing sex in public because they
No
want
me diga.
they want to police to focus on fighting serious
Ooh,
crimes.
despacito.
So they changed their laws, which now approves allowing sexual intercourse and exhibitionism in public, providing no one complains about it.
I like it like that.
The city council pushed through the reform, which states, quote, having sexual relations or committing acts of exhibitionism of a sexual nature in public places, vacant lots, inside a vehicle, or in private locations in public view will be considered administrative offenses as long as a citizen requests police intervention. So if you don't request
It's
police
Mexico.
intervention, all
They're
of
not
this...
gonna. They'll just shoot you.
Yeah, anyway. So, but it's Mexico, and you know what? Pretty soon it's going to creep across the border, and
It is here already.
it's going to.
They do it all the
They're going to
time.
legalize this. It's part of New World religion, marching through the door.
You know, I was born too early.
Now, a Republican official in the U.S. state of Utah has been criticized by the LGBT plus people because he suggests that suicide rates amongst the community can be attributed to their high number of sexual partners.
Really? I think you'd want to live longer.
Now, Dave Robinson, who identifies, now he's not gay, he identifies as a gay man. He's the new communications director for Salt Lake County. And he made that assumption, they're calling it, during an interview with the Salt Lake Tribune. He said that members of the community suffer from self-loathing and suicidal thoughts as they have over 2,000 sex partners, and that
2,000.
and that HIV drugs can cause gay men to have sex like bunny rabbits.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What century is this?
Now, the chairman of the Salt Lake County Republican Party admitted he might fire Robinson after
you
making
think?
these remarks. But in another interview, Robinson stood by his comments, but he said that there are other reasons why people take their lives.
Oh, really? Oh, brilliant.
Yeah.
By the way, are they all Mormon?
They don't really say, but it could be.
Salt Lake City.
Anyway, now the next story I have is kind of interesting to me because, as you know, we teach color, tone, and archetype, and we talk a lot about that. We've got the Hyperspace Helper book, we've got Hyperspace Plus, and we've got Healing Archetypes and Symbols. And I also have the children's books, which are in color, and especially good for people who do
I'm in
not
color.
speak the English language. We have
¿Qué
protection,
dice?
we have auras, we have the chakra system, and we have archetypes, all in color, right? And so there are color codes, and you did an excellent series
I
on
did?
YouTube. You did
Was I conscious?
on color codes. So we have that. So color codes are important. Here we have now.
We still have that someplace?
This article caught my attention because apparently this U.S. gymnast participant called Simone Biles she's 21 years old. She recently became the first woman in 24 years to be awarded the top score in every single event of a national gymnastics championship. But that's not what people are talking about.
No.
People are talking about her leotard,
Ooh.
which was teal. It was chosen because teal is the color designated to represent survivors of sexual abuse.
What color is teal?
Teal, it's kind of a blue, green, blue, depending upon.
Okay.
So, anyway, I thought, well, this is interesting. So, because I hadn't heard of it, I wanted to see what it was. So I looked up, and that opened up a whole nother can of worms. Because we've all seen the pink ribbon. Now, you also want to remember the ribbon which we teach you about. And if you've read True Reality of Sexuality and 13 Cube, we teach you about ribbon altars. Now, the closed figure 8 laying on its side is the infinity symbol. We've told you that.
Yes, but the color is important.
The color is important. And the ribbon altar is an open at the bottom, so it is not a complete. I don't think
Right.
we have
I
that
don't
here
think- no.
because we don't really want you to
No.
be using that, but we've
Correct.
talked about it. So it's open at the bottom. So it's a ribbon altar. And what does a ribbon altar mean?
It is an altar that goes around the matrix to make sure that the other altars are doing the right thing.
Yeah. So we have these.
It's like a rat fink, basically.
So, pink ribbon is an international symbol of breast cancer awareness. Now, this is a ribbon altar because if you really wanted to use pale pink, which is unconditional love and acceptance of self, you don't want to use it open. You don't want to use it as a ribbon altar. So now they're taking something like that and turning that as an equivalent of breast cancer. So, anyway, then we remember how this started because I looked all this stuff up, so I'd be sure to be accurate. Yellow is commonly seen to support our troops and to give us hope, and that actually was started by a woman who had somebody that was missing in action, and so she tied yellow ribbons around
Well,
a
that's
tree.
from the song from the 70s, Tie a Yellow Ribbon
Yes.
Around the Old Oak Tree.
Yes, her husband was a hostage taken in Iran. So they started doing that, and everybody started tying these ribbons. These are ribbon altars which activate the programming. Okay, so that's how it started. And so what fascinated me was every single color is so misinterpreted,
That's right.
but it's out there for people, and people are using it, which is triggering and installing programming in you. So here, just to give you an example, red is generally used to show support for the fight against HIV and AIDS, but then there's like,
Well, it is a sexual color.
yeah, and but you don't want to do bright red.
No.
Okay, and then blue is associated with child abuse awareness prevention, green for childhood depression.
That's not true.
Purple, pancreatic cancer.
They make this stuff up.
Yes, burgundy to support disabled adult sickle cell anemia. White used to bring awareness to blindness and scoliosis. There's a whole list of things that you can look up. Black, brown, pink,
It's just ridiculous.
cloud, copper, cream, gray,
It's just
gold.
different ribbon altars for your
Yes,
programming.
exactly. They even have puzzle color. They have autism.
Puzzle color.
Autism is the infinity symbol, believe it or not. There's a blue star symbol that represents the fight against colorectal cancer. There's a checkered eye symbol of visual impairment. There's a cloud ribbon, which represents congenital diaphragmatic hernia.
Whatever that is.
There's a Fox G1 is a severe neurological condition. Orange ribbon with a foxtail. A multicolored flame represents CRPS, complex regional pain syndrome. These things I never heard of. Blue butterfly, raise awareness of Turner syndrome. They have a giraffe print ribbon, which is a tethered spinal cord syndrome. They have a blue and purple ribbon. They have a teal and purple ribbon, a
All right,
turquoise
I
and
think it's
purple.
enough. We heard enough.
A zebra ribbon with silver sparkled stripes represents stiff person syndrome.
That's what I have.
And then it goes on to talk about the colors and the rainbow awareness ribbon, which all of these are totally incorrect. So they even have a printable awareness ribbon chart. So the reason I'm telling you this, people, is because that is to activate your programming. And if you use any of these
It
ribbons,
is.
these are ribbon altars, and those colors are totally bogus. If you want the correct colors, remember the books, Hyperspace Helper, Hyperspace Plus, Healing Archetypes and Symbols. We have the correct colors
Plus my
for you.
videos.
The videos are excellent, and we have those. Those are free. And we also have them on the member site. We have them on our YouTube channel. But, all this stuff there's a reason for it, and don't fall for it. So that's what I have to tell you today. It's a lot.
Well, that's quite enough.
That was a lot. So until next time, remember, like, comment, subscribe, and share. And for some reason, our channel is no longer alerting you when we have new videos up. So if you want to be alerted, I think you have to do that on the subscriber end. I'm not sure, but they've changed things around. And make your comments, but please be respectful. And we will see you somewhere in the world very soon.
And if you want to see this in person, come to the September class.
Yeah, that's going to scare them off.
And Tampa, I won't wear any clothes at all
Yeah,
because it'll be
maybe
so hot.
you'll wear that, right?
Maybe. No, I won't need it in Tampa because I'll be so hot and sweaty.
Yeah.
So sweaty.
You
I'll
can
need
use-
to take this off.
You can use that like a mini skirt.
Or not.
Well, you could identify as something else that day, right?
I could be a giraffe.
You could be a bearded lady. a bearded lady giraffe. How about that?
I'm not shaving my legs.
Well, if you're a giraffe, you don't have to.
That's furry.
Yeah. All right.
Bye for now.
Bye.